What happens when the royal family, known for its unshakable image, is faced with one of its youngest members in crisis? You'll be shocked to learn that the future of Prince Louis, the youngest Wales royal, is now in jeopardy. In an unexpected and emotional announcement from Buckingham Palace, the public is finally being let in on a hidden struggle within the royal family, one that could change the monarchy forever. Stay tuned for a revelation you won't believe. The shocking announcement from Buckingham Palace on a quiet afternoon rocked not only the British public but the world. Barely had anyone caught their breath from the ongoing health crises affecting the royal family when an unexpected revelation flashed across the news screens. The palace was issuing an update, but this time it wasn't about King Charles or the Princess of Wales. It was about the youngest member of the royal family, Prince Louis. And it wasn't just another royal engagement or schedule change. What the palace revealed would forever alter the public's perception of Prince Louis and the royal family's carefully curated image. At first glance, the word statement from Buckingham Palace seemed just like any other royal bulletin, but as the world quickly learned, this time it was different. This wasn't about ceremony or protocol. It was a deeply personal and, for many, heartbreaking update. The palace's tone, typically reserved and diplomatic, had shifted. The words that followed were full of emotion, conveying a sense of vulnerability rarely seen from an institution known for its polished exterior. The family appreciates the public's kindness as they navigate a private matter concerning Prince Louis, the statement read. On its surface, the phrasing appeared formal, but those who followed the royal family closely could sense something was profoundly wrong. The palace rarely spoke in such an emotionally charged manner, and that alone was enough to send ripples of concern across the nation. The media rushed to cover the announcement, with reporters flocking to Buckingham Palace to get the first glimpse of any details. But there were no leaks, no whispers of what was coming. What followed was not a well-rehearsed press release, but a message that felt raw and human, something many royal watchers had never expected to hear. Inside sources revealed that the palace had kept the matter tightly under wraps. No one had been given a heads-up. The emotional weight behind the statement was so unusual for the monarchy that speculation began to run wild. What could have caused the palace to reveal such an intimate detail about the young prince? Within hours, rumors began to surface, with some insiders suggesting that the emotional toll on the royal family, triggered by the health struggles of King Charles and the prolonged recovery of the Princess of Wales, was affecting the youngest royal member. Others speculated that the stress of the family's personal battles was taking a heavier toll on Louis than anyone had anticipated. The announcement had been a rare, unguarded glimpse into the human side of the royal family, showing a depth of vulnerability that few had witnessed before. The statement quickly reached televisions across Britain, with news broadcasts and social media flooded with concerned messages. Even those who rarely followed royal news found themselves drawn into the unfolding story, as the image of Prince Louis, a child once famous for his bright smiles, mischievous energy, and playful antics, was now cast in a new light. This was no longer about royal duties, titles, or appearances. The palace had opened a door into the personal and private lives of the family, and what they revealed was both troubling and deeply emotional. Inside Buckingham Palace, the news sent shockwaves through the corridors. It wasn't just a routine statement, it was the confirmation of what many had feared. Louis, the young prince known for his boundless energy and infectious laughter, was struggling. The announcement was followed by a plea for privacy, and the media was urged to show restraint and compassion. But the damage had already been done. The public knew that something had shifted. The royal family's carefully managed public image was being set aside, and in its place was the raw reality of a child's silent suffering. In the days that followed, the royal family's decision to make such a public admission seemed to further break down the walls between them and the public. Even the most hardened journalists were moved by the raw emotion that had been displayed. But no one could have anticipated the next bombshell, an impromptu press appearance by Prince William, who had decided to speak directly to the media about the situation. Without a podium or script, William stood before the press, his emotions barely contained, and delivered a confession that would leave the nation in shock. This wasn't just about royal protocol, this was about a father's pain, a family's struggle, and a child who needed help. The words William spoke were not what anyone expected. He didn't stand before the cameras with the usual royal poise. Instead, he began with a long, heavy pause, the weight of the moment thick in the air. And then his voice cracked as he spoke of Louis's emotional struggles. William didn't shy away from the truth. He revealed that Louis, the once joyful child who had brought so much light to the royal family, was now facing emotional turmoil that no child should have to bear. Louis's nights had been filled with fear and confusion. His days, once filled with laughter and play, were now clouded by the weight of a sorrow too big for his small heart. William spoke of how Louis would often wander into their bedroom at night, wide-eyed and fearful, unsure of where to place his emotions. His playful mornings had been replaced with tearful afternoons. Dinners, once a joyous family affair, were now interrupted by moments of silence, with Louis barely touching his food, lost in his thoughts. Perhaps the most painful revelation came when William shared the words that Louis had whispered to him during one of their quiet moments. "Is Mommy going to leave like Grandpa?" Those 8 words, spoken by a child so young, were a brutal reminder of the toll that grief and fear had taken on Louis's young mind. It was this question, William admitted, that forced him and Catherine to take a hard look at their family's priorities. The weight of their royal duties, combined with the emotional strain caused by Catherine's illness and King Charles's ongoing health battle, had taken a toll on their children in ways they hadn't fully realized. William's voice wavered as he confessed that it was this moment, when Louis asked that heartbreaking question, that led him and Catherine to reevaluate everything. They knew then that their focus had to shift, not just on their royal responsibilities, but on the well-being of their children, particularly Louis. The public's reaction was one of profound empathy and compassion. No longer were they simply observing the royal family from a distance. They were witnessing a father in pain, struggling to protect his son from the weight of the world's expectations. William's appeal for privacy, "He's just a boy," he said, was not a royal command. It was a plea from a father who had already seen too much of his family's pain paraded across the world stage. The emotional vulnerability William displayed was so powerful that even the most cynical members of the press were moved. His heartfelt request for the media to respect his son's privacy resonated deeply with the public. Behind the palace gates, the effects of this emotional crisis rippled through the family. Princess Charlotte, who had long been the steady protector of her younger brother, was overheard sobbing to her nanny. She expressed her deep frustration and sorrow over Louis's emotional struggle, whispering how he didn't understand why his mother wasn't getting better. Charlotte's own attempts to shield Louis from the tension within the family had taken a toll on her, and in a moment of vulnerability, the young girl let her emotions spill out. These words were relayed to Catherine through trusted staff, and the impact was devastating. The thought that Charlotte, too, was silently suffering, trying to hold her family together, was a painful realization for the parents. At the same time, Louis's behavior had changed dramatically. Once a boy full of life, energy, and curiosity, Louis had withdrawn. His usual vibrant self was now a shadow of his former joy. He would spend hours alone in his room, seemingly lost in his thoughts. Meals, once an event to look forward to, were now met with silence, with Louis barely touching his food. His toys and games, once his world, were now forgotten as he sank into a quiet isolation. It was clear to his parents that something needed to be done, but they were also faced with the painful reality that they had failed to notice the signs of distress in their youngest child until it was almost too late. Catherine, though recovering from her own illness, could no longer ignore the silent crisis unfolding in her family. The burden of their public lives combined with their private pain had created a perfect storm that Louis could no longer weather alone. Catherine's heart broke as she realized that in trying to protect their children from the pressures of royal life, they had overlooked the quiet suffering of their youngest son. In that moment, the royal family's focus shifted. No longer would they be solely dedicated to their public duties and royal obligations. Now it was time for them to focus on what mattered most, the well-being of their children, especially Louis. The world was watching, and the royal family's decision to open up about their private struggles had humanized them in a way that had never been seen before. This wasn't just about royal duties or public appearances. This was about family, about love, pain, and the deeply human experience of trying to protect your children from a world that can be too much for them to bear. As the future of the royal family remained uncertain, one thing was clear: the protection and healing of Prince Louis would take precedence over everything else. The suggestion of therapy for Prince Louis came quietly, almost hesitantly at first. It was a personal matter, and even for a family like the Waleses, the thought of subjecting their 7-year-old to public scrutiny through such an intimate process was almost unimaginable. What would the headlines say? How long before speculation twisted truth into scandal, reducing Louis's emotional health into a tabloid headline? The idea of their youngest child's emotional pain being picked apart by the media was unthinkable. The royal family had already endured its share of public drama, but this was something altogether different. It was about a child who until now had brought nothing but joy and light to the public, and now found himself at the center of something much darker. And yet, as painful as the prospect was, doing nothing seemed like an even greater threat. Behind the pristine public facade of the royal family, a private storm was brewing, one that threatened to unravel the carefully woven threads that held their lives together. The world continued to see the polished, smiling portraits of the Wales family, choreographed appearances designed to maintain an image of royal perfection. But inside the walls of their home, the reality was far more complicated. It was a sobering reminder that no title, no crown, no line of succession can shield the heart from the weight of vulnerability. No amount of royal status could make the pain of a child's suffering disappear. Louis's emotional journey was becoming an overwhelming force for his family, one that they could no longer control from behind the palace gates. It wasn't long before a decision was made, one that would change Louis's life forever. The day started like any other. It was a regular weekday and the Wales household moved through the motions of family life. But by mid-morning the news broke: Louis would not be attending school. Teachers at Lamock were notified, but no explanation was given. Classmates were confused, and by the end of the day it was confirmed: Prince Louis was being withdrawn from school. There was no clear timeline for his return, no official statement from the palace, just a quiet decision that was felt by all but understood by few. Behind the scenes, it was clear that something had broken. Louis's world had become too much for him to bear, and his family had reached a tipping point. Weeks of subtle signs had led up to this decision. William and Catherine had done their best to maintain a sense of normalcy for Louis. Despite their own challenges, the ongoing strain of Catherine's illness and the gravity of King Charles's health crisis, they had hoped that keeping things steady at home would protect their son from the turbulence swirling around them. But it wasn't enough. Louis's emotional well-being was slipping away, and they couldn't continue pretending that everything was fine. The breaking point came unexpectedly during a routine classroom activity. A fellow student, seemingly unaware of the delicate state of Louis's mind, asked a question that would unravel everything: "Is your mom still sick?" The simple question, born out of innocent curiosity, was the spark that ignited Louis's quiet suffering. Without warning, he shut down, withdrawing into himself. His eyes, once bright with the mischief that had made him a darling of the press, filled with confusion and fear. His silence became his shield. That evening, when he returned home, he refused to eat, refusing even to speak. By morning, Louis could not bring himself to go back to school. The emotional wound had been exposed, and the pain was too much to hide. The gravity of the situation became undeniable. Behind closed doors, the royal family made their decision. A quiet, urgent meeting took place between William, Catherine, and their closest aides. It became clear that Louis could no longer continue in the current environment. Not while his wounds were so raw and his fear so evident. No media briefings were held. There would be no crafted public explanations. Louis would be withdrawn from Lamock, and he would remain shielded from the press and the public eye for the time being. There would be no royal engagements, no appearances at charity events, just a quiet withdrawal from the world as they focused on healing their son. Inside Adelaide Cottage, the royal family's decision was met with quiet acceptance. The palace had chosen to remove Louis from the public narrative, a move that was uncharacteristic of the monarchy. For years, royal children had been expected to follow strict protocols to maintain appearances for the sake of the crown, but now it was clear that the royal family had put Louis's emotional health above all else. The decision was made to begin homeschooling him under close supervision, ensuring that Louis would not be exposed to the pressures of his royal duties until he was ready. Catherine, though still recovering from her own health struggles, devoted herself entirely to Louis's care. Despite her physical limitations, she spent long hours sitting with him, reading books, playing quietly, and simply being present. Her presence became the anchor that Louis clung to. In the midst of a world that seemed to be spinning out of control, Catherine's love for her son became the one thing he could trust. The royal family had learned that healing could not happen on their terms in the public eye. It had to happen in the quiet, protected corners of their home. Their new approach, one that focused on emotional recovery, became the blueprint for Louis's healing process. The family was not alone in this journey. A surprising figure emerged from the shadows: Princess Anne, the Princess Royal. Known for her no-nonsense approach and unwavering loyalty to her family, Anne took on a role that no one expected. Behind the scenes, she made a quiet vow to herself: she would not let Louis fade into the shadows. Anne's approach was different from what anyone had anticipated. It was grounded in simplicity, stability, and connection. She would be the bridge between Louis and the world he was retreating from. It all began with a conversation between Anne and William. There were no palace aides, no formalities, just a brother and sister bound by their shared love for their family. William, exhausted and overwhelmed, confessed that he didn't know how to reach Louis anymore. Catherine had been doing all she could, but Louis remained distant, emotionally closed off. Anne listened carefully without offering empty platitudes. Then she made a suggestion that startled William. "Send him to me," she said. "Let him work with his hands. Let him listen to the birds instead of the whispers." And so Louis was quietly relocated to Anne's country estate. There, far from the media and the pressures of royal life, Louis began to find peace. He spent his mornings tending to small gardening tasks, watering plants, clearing leaves, accompanied by Anne, who shared stories of her own childhood mischief with her brother Charles. Slowly, Louis began to reconnect with the world around him. He asked questions again, he smiled, he laughed. The weight of his emotions didn't vanish overnight, but something shifted. Anne's steady, grounding presence gave Louis the strength to heal. Anne's approach wasn't soft or indulgent, but it was steady. She didn't offer him therapy or long discussions. Instead, she offered him something far simpler: connection, responsibility, and the chance to find himself again. One afternoon, she introduced him to horseback riding. "It's not about spectacle," she explained. "It's about trust, control, and confidence." Louis took to it instantly, riding across the open fields with the wind in his hair. With each ride, he grew stronger, more confident, and more connected to himself. As Louis began to heal, Anne became a trusted confidant for William and Catherine. Her words of reassurance brought them a sense of peace that had been absent for months. In one conversation, she told Catherine, "He's got Diana's fire, he just needs direction." For Catherine, those words held more weight than anything else. Diana, her mother-in-law, had faced her own battles with royal life, and now it was her grandson who needed the same guidance. But even as Louis found peace, the palace was grappling with something far more troubling: a leaked memo. The document, marked as strictly internal, suggested that Louis be removed from the public eye altogether. Phrases like low visibility approach and limit press exposure were used to describe how to manage the young prince's public image. It was a cold, calculated document, and its implications were chilling. Instead of embracing Louis's vulnerability, someone within the palace had decided that it was safer to make him disappear. William was furious. He confronted senior palace aides demanding answers. Catherine, too, was livid. When shown the document, she reportedly called it inhumane, accusing the palace bureaucracy of using royal titles to avoid accountability. And then Princess Anne stepped in. In a rare internal address, Anne confronted those responsible for the memo. "You do not contain children," she said, "you protect them." Her words were a turning point, and they forced the palace to reconsider its approach. Outside the gates of Buckingham Palace, the public began to demand answers. Louis's absence from public events had not gone unnoticed. Social media exploded with questions about his well-being, and journalists began pressing for clarification. The perception of secrecy surrounding the young prince had struck a nerve. The monarchy was once again faced with a scandal, not one of their making, but one of their own creation. Finally, after weeks of silence, the palace did what it should have done long ago. They released the full truth. In a statement that shocked the world, Buckingham Palace acknowledged Louis's emotional struggles and confirmed that he was receiving professional support. For the first time in royal history, the monarchy admitted that even their youngest members, despite all their privilege and protection, could face emotional crises. Accompanying the statement was a handwritten note from Catherine, which read, "He is strong but young, and we are learning to navigate this as a family." The public's response was overwhelmingly supportive. Parents, teachers, and mental health professionals rallied behind the Wales family, praising them for their transparency. Mental health charities applauded the royal family for breaking the silence on the stigma of emotional struggles, especially within elite institutions. For the first time, the royal family had allowed the public to see their human side, and in doing so, they had made a powerful statement about vulnerability, love, and the healing process. What followed wasn't just about Louis's recovery, it was about the royal family learning to heal in full view of the world. And it was about a family fractured but determined, finding strength in their shared pain, breaking down the walls of royal perfection and showing the world the humanity beneath. If you found this story shocking, you're not alone. The truth about the music industry is darker than we ever imagined, and the more people hear about it, the harder it will be for them to keep hiding the truth. Don't let this story be swept under the rug. Share this video, comment below with your thoughts, and don't forget to subscribe for more deep dives into the stories they don't want you to hear. Together, we can make sure the truth is heard.